gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for September 22nd, 2022. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, I'm starting a video game publishing label based on my years of experience yelling at developers on the internet. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host to Game Mess Mornings. It's merrittk from the internet. Merritt, how are you doing?
Yeah, from the shambling remains of Fanbite.
Yes, from a smoking crater that was Games Media.
Mm-hmm. I stepped out of it like an anime character who was just hit with a huge laser, and it's
Exactly.
just like, wow, you singed my arm hair. Like,
right, yes. The clothes damaged, the Merritt not so much. How are you doing coming out all this? It's been a real nightmare. It's like, it always feels like that meme of the guy looking over like, oh God, something's happening over there. And it just seems like the site got decimated by a corporate owner that maybe remembered, oh, we're doing this, and now we're bored of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, so it's been a week since they kind of shut us down. Fanbite technically still exists.
Right.
I still work there. A few people still work there. But it's pretty clear that they were just like not really feeling it. And I get that, you know what? You're Tencent, you're a huge corporation, you're looking at the balance books and you're like, what is this line entry, this line item here? They happened to make that decision, and it's a bummer, but I think everyone who was at the site is moving on to bigger and better things, which is cool. And it was a great few years while it lasted. It was more stable than a lot of similar kinds of jobs for those few years. So
it does feel like that, like where it's like a lot of writing about this stuff, a lot of creating content based on video games on the internet is jumping from one kind of stable rock to the next, while these bigger entities just try to like find out, like, do we actually care about this? And usually the answer ends up being no, and it's we're not surprised anymore, right?
Yeah, and I think we've seen like so much of this in the last few years. And on the one hand, like, it is kind of understandable, if your job is to like make these books balance, if the numbers aren't there, fine. But on the other hand, it is always kind of like a bummer when good people lose their jobs, and also just the way that they did it. I don't know if you were following this.
A little bit, yeah.
It was very like drawn out and excruciating of like people would get called into a room and they'd disappear off the Slack.
Yeah, that is bizarre.
I know you had Danielle on last week,
yeah,
or was it early this week? But yeah, so like
week,
it was just a weird way of doing things. Like I said, I'm still technically there, but I'm going to be very happy to not be working for Tencent pretty soon. But yeah, I mean, you know what? You can only linger for so long, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm excited to do some other stuff to jump to another rock.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's when things like this happen, it's always like, oh God, this is so scary. But hopefully, it really is more opportunities open up, and the voice that really did get established at Fanbite, it was very strong, and felt like it was obviously going to reach where it needed to get if it got enough time. But whatever, it's going to get there now in a bunch of separate ways with, like you said, everyone going on to bigger and better things. So I'm really hopeful for the future of everyone that was at Fanbite, and anyone who's still there and will probably move on soon. Yeah, good luck to everybody. Absolutely. Okay, before we get into the mess, let's talk about what we do here most weekdays. I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, hello, welcome. You can always watch the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. All right, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Logitech G Cloud handheld gets announced. I picked this one up from Jez Corden over at Windows Central, who broke it down as such. Logitech has teamed up with Microsoft and NVIDIA to offer a handheld based entirely on Xbox and NVIDIA GeForce Now cloud gaming services. The Logitech G Cloud gaming handheld is an Android-based all-in-one gaming handheld with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth support, set to launch in October. The handheld comes with Xbox Cloud Gaming and NVIDIA GeForce Now bundled as standard, with support for Google Play services with access to services like Stadia, Amazon Luna, Steam Link, and among other gaming apps. It starts at $350 and is set to launch in the US and Canada next month, with other regions to follow later. Merritt, what's your first reaction to this? Because for me, it's that price.
That's
It's up there.
incredibly funny. I was like, oh, this is like a $100 sort of cloud gaming device, but like,
Yeah.
what, like, who is this for?
Yeah.
Is my question, I guess. Like,
It's a tough one, right? Because when you okay, so people have been asking Microsoft and Sony to get back in the handheld game, especially after the Steam Deck, and really from the Switch. And this feels like the roundabout way that these big companies sometimes do that. Hey, we got a partner that makes hardware; they could take on the risk, and we can work with them. And then Logitech goes like, "Yeah, we'll do that, but it's your store, so we got to make money on the hardware, and we're Logitech, so we have a lot of overhead." So then that price is going to be higher than if you were to go online to Alibaba and find a Chinese handheld and find one of these for $150. That essentially is the same thing. Now, this thing does have a 7-inch screen, which is a little bit bigger than most of those ones you get from Chinese handhelds, but it's still not compared to, I mean, listen, this is $50 less than the Steam Deck's base model, and it is far, far, far from a Steam Deck. And even like Jez's framing here, like this is entirely based on cloud gaming. That's not necessarily true. This is just an Android tablet with a controller built into it, right? So you would expect to be able to do some native gaming, and it seems like the specs we have, it's going to be kind of just okay at that side of things. I don't know.
Bizarre. That's I still haven't. I remember seeing Stadia at like PAX 2019. And just thinking like, who is this for? Like, I still haven't really heard a good pitch on like the use case for cloud gaming. And Square and other companies keep putting out these like cloud versions of games on the Switch, and it's like, or Capcom too, like Resident Evil Village Cloud Edition was just announced at the Nintendo showcase, and I feel like I have pretty good internet. Like I have fiber optics. I live in New York. So it's like probably one of the best case scenarios in the US. And I still wouldn't want to play a cloud-based thing. Like it's not even the question of ownership to me, although that is kind of an issue. It's just like I just don't trust that it's going to work,
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And for me, the big issue, and maybe this is solving some of those mental hurdles that I've had, that it's that last mile problem of not like getting the internet to my front door. It is getting the game from the device to my hands, and like what is the input method. And it's nice that this does actually solve all of those issues. It is a complete gaming device ready to go. So once it's connected, you don't have to worry about like, oh, I'm gonna pair a controller and that's already paired to the PS5. I don't want to take it off of there. Like that is enough of friction created that it can prevent some people, I think, from engaging with cloud gaming overall. But all that said, this is $350. It's a lot of money. It really begs the question, who is this for, in a way that there's no real great answer for it. I think there are some people who are, who might be like super into the Xbox ecosystem, or maybe are really into NVIDIA GeForce Now or whatever, and they've been like looking over jealously at the Switch, I guess. But there have been other ways to enable this, even with systems that have everything included. And it's like you were just waiting for the official thing. Like this is on an Xbox News blog post, so obviously they're giving it its full blessing. Maybe that does have some effect on that audience. I just don't know if it ever expands out of that. I would be surprised if it does.
I would too, for sure.
Let's see. I'm going to go through some of the specs here. Qualcomm Snapdragon 720G. It's an octa-core CPU, 2.3 gigahertz. What the important thing here is, this is I think it's equivalent to some stuff you might find in like one of those budget Samsung phones. It's not their top of the line stuff. A budget Samsung phone. Someone mentioned it might be in the Samsung Galaxy Tab 6 Lite. S6 Lite. I have one of those. It's pretty good for like running DS games. I don't know if I looked it up. Samsung does a lot of their own chips, but I think in the United States they often use Qualcomm. Maybe they're using that. Maybe that's what I have. But that's been pretty okay for emulation and stuff. But But still, I think you don't expect going into this that you're going to be able to get the PS2 emulator off the Google Play Store and play games like that. It's going to be PlayStation 1, N64, and stuff like DS maybe. For sure. But anything beyond that's going to be kind of out of the question. This screen, though, does sound pretty good. 450 nits of brightness. That's pretty bright. And then the 7-inch IPS screen, it's multi-touch, 1080p, 60 frames, and then 60 hertz. 1080p is a bit much for 7-inch screen, but I know it's a good
Yeah.
bullet point on the box. I think a lot of people
Sure.
are
Yeah.
into. Still though, we're gonna have to. I asked for one. I reached out to Logitech to get my hands on one.
Sure. Yeah.
They said yes. We'll see. And I suppose if you like really want to get in on this right now, it is $50 off right now, so you can get it for $300 before it goes up to $350. Even at that price, though, I would.
Yeah.
If someone were to come to me and say, "Hey, what should I get this thing?" I would probably still point most people at the $400 Steam Deck. I think
Yeah.
that
Save
that
the
thing,
extra
yeah,
$100 or whatever and just get a Steam Deck. Like, if the Steam Deck didn't exist, this could maybe like make some kind of sense.
yeah,
But it's sandwiched between the Steam Deck as like the premium option, and then yeah, like all of the handhelds running Android that you can get, yeah, like on AliExpress or through Enbernic or through all these
hmm
different companies. So it's like, okay, this is just like a weird, awkward middle child.
yeah. And it seems like the appeal is you might recognize the Logitech brand, and
Right.
I mean I don't know how much of an effect that actually has. That seems like
Yeah.
something that probably won't sway too many people, but we'll see. Xbox is getting a big update in September. I say big. It's not nothing too major. They will enable you to customize the color of the buttons on your Xbox Elite Wireless Series
Ooh.
2 controller. So actually, I have a video there. Let's see. Let's just play that real quick. And I think it's just for the Xbox button, not like for the face buttons. So if you want to, go through the RGB stuff there, that Xbox Elite Wireless Controller Series 2 is also available though, starting today for $130. The other big part of it is they are changing up the way the library works. So they're going to
Right.
make it much easier to go tab between the various parts of your library. And I think I actually have a little bit of a glimpse at this. Yeah, it's like all games, own games, and then it goes to Xbox Game Pass, EA Play, Xbox Live Gold, and owned apps. And those are all now tabs at the top of the page instead of kind of
Oh, okay.
over to the side. So
Yeah.
might be a little bit easier to find your games. I don't know. Where are you at with like console UI these days? I'm like used to the way they work, so maybe I'm just like,
Yeah,
I don't need it.
I'll be honest, like I haven't even jumped on this generation yet.
Mm-hmm.
I veered pretty hardly towards PC and Switch gaming
Yeah.
back in like 2019,
Oh yeah,
2020. I happened to get a gaming PC right before they became absurdly expensive. So
that
yeah,
was the right
even I
time to
mean,
jump on too, because those
yeah,
consoles were getting so kind of. They bummed me out, the PS4 and the Xbox One, and it's
yeah,
like that's when I really jumped on PC gaming. Was like
they lingered.
2015,
I remember
2016.
trying to
Yes.
play Destiny 2 on a PS4. The load times were like 30 seconds, and then you'd get
Hmm.
slow down from just like all of the loot dropping. So I was like, okay, I need a PC.
Yep.
Um, so I'm kind of spoiled by that. But even just like the Xbox app and stuff on Windows, I mean, it's better than the Epic Store, but it's still kind of like this could use some redesign. So that kind of makes sense to me that they're trying to make it a little more approachable. But
Yeah,
to me, the 360, that was always like
I
that's
know
sort of my like
those
my
blades.
pinnacle of UI.
Yes, it was the platonic ideal of what getting into a console should feel like. I
Hmm.
agree. But I mean, speaking of building a PC, getting it at the right time, prices going up.
Oh my
Nvidia
God,
says
yeah.
falling GPU prices are a story of the past. I picked this up from Monica J. White at Digital Trends, but this is from an interview that Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang did with Gordon Ung at PC Gamer. I love, or PC World, excuse me. I love Gordon. He is fantastic. Of all like the people that you can go to listen to talk about PC gaming hardware. Gordon's actually my number one above all the the YouTubers and stuff. He's just been doing it for so long. He has such a good perspective on stuff. He did a great interview with Jensen. And basically, the story of this new generation of 40 series cards are that they are a significant upgrade over the last generation, it seems like, based on what we know so far. They are also a significant price increase. The RTX 4090 will arrive at a $1,600 price tag, followed by $1,200 for the 4080 16 gigabyte, and then the $900 for the RTX 4080 12 gigabyte. These prices are very steep, according to many people. And in response, Jensen said, Moore's Law is dead. A 12-inch wafer is a lot more expensive today. The idea that the chip is going to go down in price is a story of the past. Now, I think you can look at NVIDIA's profit margins and see that, well, I mean, we know where a lot of that money is going towards, NVIDIA and raising their stock price and stuff. But also, they feel like they probably aren't being too pressured by AMD. AMD does have better graphics cards than they've had in a long time. But if you are going to go build something and you need something that's going to last you for a long time, I probably would still point most people towards the NVIDIA cards just because of the software support and stuff like
Right.
DLSS 3.0 that's coming out with this new generation. So, I mean, when you built your PC to today, it probably feels like a completely different world because, like you said, you got in right at the right time.
It's yeah, no, it's unreal. I am just kind of like dreading the day that like I've sort of seen the the slow like decline of like okay, ultra, very high, high, just like as you're like installing new games, and it's just
Yeah,
like oh god. Um, so I'm it's my yeah my PC's 3 years old at this point, so I'm kind of dreading the day when it's
yeah.
like all right, there will come a time when I have to replace this, and I mean, can you at least buy graphics cards now? Like I'm
Yes.
so
So
that's
that
something.
is flipped on its head basically.
Right, yeah,
Is a year ago it was impossible. The prices were sky high.
right.
Now it really is because of mining of cryptocurrency, specifically Ether. I think Ether is what it's called. Uh,
Ethereum, yeah.
Ethereum, yes, Ethereum. Thank you. That completely crashed. So the market got flooded with secondhand stuff, and so now all these companies like Newegg, they have a ton of stuff on hand. Zotac Gaming
Right.
and EVGA is getting out because of this stuff. So you can go and get a new card at very affordable prices, especially compared to what they were. And that probably will carry over somewhat into the 40 series. I mean, those they will sell out, but
Right.
it shouldn't be quite as much of a bloodbath as it was last time. And the prices shouldn't go like the secondhand prices shouldn't be so much more higher, like where it's like, oh, this is twice the price. So still though, these are expensive. You're not going to be able to get them for much cheaper, like if you're going to like look for a deal. But you probably will be able to find some of these cards, and then you'll definitely be able to find the 30 series cards, and those will be
Sure.
discounted for a while there. So there's some good news, some silver lining here,
Mhm.
but Nvidia and AMD have been trying to take as much profit right now because like you said, like you couldn't get these things. So
Right,
like,
yeah.
hey, well, if we are gonna raise prices, we're gonna do it now, and they
Yeah.
did. Now we're still waiting for AMD to come out and announce their next generation of cards, and they have done this with their CPUs. The last announcement where like they were taking profits by raising the prices of their stuff and taking things out, like they weren't including the cooler anymore.
Yeah.
So they were finding ways to increase their profit margin. The most recent gen, they didn't raise prices, and it's like okay, maybe they are going to try to be the competitive price point company
Mhm.
again, and then maybe that can like put some pressure on Nvidia, but we'll see. Popular YouTuber Dunkey is launching a game publisher. Speaking in an announcement video, Gastro, who's the actual name of the person who is video game Dunkey, said he was sick of watching from the sidelines and believes he'll be able to use his reach and experience critiquing video games to help bring promising indie titles to the market. Here's a quote from him. For years and years and years, I have always sought out the very best indie games out there and have tried to do them justice, putting millions of eyes on the games that actually deserve attention. He added, a lot of games out there understand how to emulate the look of your favorite games, but don't deliver where it actually counts. Many of the true games out there are being drowned out in a sea of mediocrity. You need someone who can help you be seen. I want Big Mode, the name of his publishing studio, to act as my seal of approval, which is something that I do not apply lightly. I'm looking for creative control. I'm not looking for creative control of your games, excuse me, but I do want to be involved. I'm sick of sitting on the sidelines waiting for games to appear. Now I want to get in there and help make it happen. There's been some backlash to this, Merritt, I've seen online.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, where people are like, I'm kind of like, the reason he says he thinks he'll be good at this is he's played a lot of games.
Right,
And
right.
and I think he's probably gonna, and a lot of people pointed out he's probably gonna go through a bit of a ringer here when he actually discovers that that's not gonna help him very much. What's your reaction here?
So, I guess, like, upfront, big Dunkey fan. I've been watching him for, like, 10 years. So just I guess that maybe colors my perception of this. I
That's
think
fair.
on the one hand, like, yes, being a good critic or good entertainer doesn't make you necessarily a good designer or a good producer. So like there is that I think that's the sort of natural reaction people are having of yeah, like, okay, so you've played a lot of games and you like maybe are good at critiquing them, but that maybe doesn't mean you know how to make them. On the other hand, I have kind of a hot take with this, which is that like I think a lot of people in games media, not just games media, video games,
Yeah.
the world, um, have kind of like uncool kid syndrome where like, you grew up getting, picked on or you're kind of dorky or whatever. Less true now, but people who are like in their 30s and 40s in the industry now grew up in a very different atmosphere.
Yeah.
Um, And I think when people see someone just coming out and being really brash and confident and funny and popular, it's like, "Oh, I can't wait for this guy to fail." Um, and so, like, the video was weird. Like, I think the video is kinda weird because he doesn't say, like, "Here's the people I've been talking to. I've been getting, like, advice on how to do this
Right.
stuff." I would assume he has been doing some of that, though, and, like, the other thing too is I think a lot of people don't really know what Dunkey's audience is. Like, t for people like us who are like, "Oh, yeah, of course, you're naming the biggest indie games of the last 10 years. Literally everyone has heard of these." Um,
Yeah,
I don't know that his audience has. Like, I think a lot of his audience, he is introducing them to these games. Like,
he
they're
is.
playing
I've
EA
experienced
stuff. They're
that.
playing annual releases of franchise games. And so he is doing this, you know, this thing of introducing these people to these games that, oh, Hades, of course I know Hades, but these people might not. Um, so I'm really curious to see how this goes because I feel like it's either going to go pretty well or there's going to be a Jason Schreier essay on this, like reporting on this in like 2 years about how it totally exploded. And
Yeah.
I hope it's the former. But you never know.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, I think it's easy to come out and criticize this initial message. There's nothing there, though. We don't really know what it's
No,
actually
yeah.
going to turn into. So, this is him just saying, "I'm doing this. Reach out to me if you're interested in working with me. I have money, so I'm
Yeah,
going to do something
basically,
with
yeah.
money."
He has
And
money, he has reach. Yeah.
right, and that's the most important aspect of making this work, honestly. Yeah, he doesn't know exactly how to make a great game. Maybe I think he's probably a pretty good tastemaker for
Yeah.
as far as that goes, and from what he's been doing. But whatever, he never said he was going to be making the game. See, he's just gonna be looking for, like, trying to use his taste to find the next game and help
Right, yeah.
financially back it and help enable creators. And I think that is something, yeah, I think he probably would be at least decently suited to. We've seen this happen. A lot of recent indie publishing labels have been kind of a similar thing. People going from like games media to working on
Yeah.
that stuff in one way or the other. And they use their tastes to try to, like, say, hey, I think this thing can work and find an audience, or we can build a sort of voice for our publishing label,
Mhm.
and you fit that voice, and that's gonna, and we'll, you leverage that, and it has worked. And like, we've also seen this exact pipeline of going from YouTuber to a publisher at Yogscast. I mean, they
Yeah,
just
that
put
was
out,
gonna say,
yeah, what
exactly.
was that Trombone Champ that they published? Yeah. Jan's in chat saying that.
Okay,
I just
yeah,
looked
and
last night.
they're putting out that mini golf roguelike or, deck builder as
Yeah.
well, I think. Yeah.
And I'm like, we were just on, I was streaming last night, and I saw a game that was published by Yogscast. It's not Trombone Champ. It's another game, but it's one that's, I think it's Played Up, right? Is it Played Up? But either way, it's like they are having major success. And
Right.
so I'm like, I'm not going to sit here and really say that I think what he is saying in this video means he can't do it. I
Yeah,
get that reaction, and I do think he's probably going to run into some walls trying to do this.
sure.
But I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, I run into walls
Yeah.
all the time doing this job that I've been doing for a very long time. So it's how you learn, right?
I mean, honestly, also just any big influx of money and publishing into the indie space, I think is great. Um, there have been so many weird little scandals in the last like few months, even just in the last few weeks, things about, indie publishers like taking money that was like earmarked for devs for certain
Yeah.
purposes and just using it. Um, and so there are some great publishers in that space right now, but I think, more people in there is only gonna be good. So,
Yes.
fingers crossed that it goes well.
Yep. I think that as publishing games on your own, and I mean, like, actually, like, developing the game and publishing it yourself becomes easier, and that has led to more crowded marketplaces. That democratization is, I've always felt it was important. I'm always been for it, and people sort of have a little bit of a backlash to, like, oh, my PlayStation store is filled with crap games.
Mhm.
I'm like, that's a small price to pay to enable some kid that might have some interesting idea and does it poorly the first time, but then
Sure.
it gets noticed and maybe gets another chance to build on that. I think that I imagine that as something that is important to the creative process, and thinking that focusing on that would be better than trying to shut these things down. But that also creates a space for, okay, well, if you could be sort of a guidance, and by guidance I mean providing money for marketing to ensure things do get a chance to find an audience, then
Mhm.
that's important. And I kind of can't imagine a better sort of way of doing that than getting on a Dunkey video. Now, that's
Right.
like, Dunkey does consider himself a critic, and he's going to be covering his own games. Whatever, it's YouTube. This is like I'm sort of over that too. Yeah, there's no rules. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, clearly the last week has shown there's no rules on YouTube. You can just kind of do whatever.
Right. And I mean, he can get criticized for that. Again, if you want to criticize him for that, go to town. I'm personally am sort of over it. I'm expecting more of these big creators to go in these different directions and do stuff like this, because they have a lot of money and they are like, well, what are we going to do with this money? We got to do something with it. You can't just let it just sit there. That's against capitalism. So they're going to find themselves in similar positions, and I expect this pathway to work if it doesn't work for him, it'll work for some others, and we'll keep seeing more and more of it down the line. In Japan, we got the physical sales chart for the last week of September 12th through September 18th. Splatoon 3 still number one with another 500,000 physical copies sold. So that we got the news that it was the fastest selling game in Japan ever in its first 3 days. 3.45 million copies total. Another 500,000 just physical. I think the split there was about half and half. It was about 50-50, I think. So I think we could probably expect that if that trend is maintaining, that another 500,000 sold digitally. So it's 1 million copies in like week 2 or whatever it is. That's very good. The rest of the chart, a lot of other Nintendo games, but then 2, 3, and 4 are all Dragon Quest X offline. Which is still just a funny concept to me. Dragon Quest X offline, but then that's the Switch version at 2, PS4 version at 3, and the PS5 version at number 4. Not too many surprises here. Kirby, I guess, at number 9, still 5,000 copies sold. That's pretty good legs for that game. We had legs in the NPD in the United States, having legs in Japan, but those Splatoon 3 numbers are just off the charts bonkers, right?
It's wild.
Yeah.
I kind of bounced off Splatoon 3. I might pick it back up again, but yeah, I just, as someone who plays like team-based shooters online sometimes, or like on a PC, just having to deal with Nintendo's whole philosophy is very philosophy and like network infrastructure, where they're like, oh, if someone leaves in the first minute of a game, we just boot everybody.
Yeah.
And you have to go back into the queue. Like, oh, that seems like the worst possible way you could do it. But a lot of my friends are into it. I was digging the single player mode, what I saw of it so far. It did some of the levels were a little like, okay, these are all kind of like look like they were made in the same editor for like Mario Sunshine special levels or whatever. But I love the style of that game. This is the first one I've played, so I didn't have a Wii U, and I didn't pick up 2. But have you been a longtime Splatoon guy? Or?
I have, yes. I really liked it on the Wii U. I am at a point where I'm like, I've been playing for so long, I really should have just bared down and got used to the motion controls. I'm still not doing that. I'm bad at them. But the problem is I like to play in bed, like laying down on the Switch. I'm like on my side, and then the motion controls don't work very well in that situation. But whatever. I've been a long time Splatoon fan. This is the third one where I've showed up and played a lot of it at launch. It is very familiar. And yet it's kind of it's doing enough where I'm like, oh, it's just nice to get back in there and play this game with a lot of people who are also wanting to play at the same time. I'd never played much Salmon Run, so I'm going to do some more of that horde mode now that it's available 24/7. So it's like we don't have to try to like line up our schedules with Nintendo being just like, weird maniacs.
Play too much of it because people will get bored of it. Like.
And so I'm like, okay, cool, that's fixed. I haven't touched the card game, but I did start the single player campaign, and we talked a little bit about it in the quick look, and I'm gonna go back to it and actually finish that, because those single player campaigns are actually surprisingly really solid as you go through them. They have great boss fights and things like that. So the hardware sales in Japan, the Xbox Series S actually outsold the PS5. Again, now the PS5 has been sort of getting allotments shipped to certain territories, and it seems like maybe they were focusing on the United States throughout September, because it's much more available here in the last few weeks. Only, let's see, about 11,000 PS5 sold between the digital edition and the standard edition. And the Xbox Series S on its own was 13,200 units. Xbox Series X, only 866. So that's even less available, I'm assuming. Of course, it's the Switch, though. The Switch OLED on its own is 97,000 units. And then the Switch and Switch Lite are about 30,000 units on top of that. So that's the original Switch and then the Switch Lite. So whenever I see these numbers and I see the Switch Lite at kind of like being pretty minuscule compared to the other versions, I'm like, I was assuming they would do a Switch Lite OLED, and now I'm like, no, they're
Yeah,
not going to do anything more. The Switch Lite's just this thing. It's going to be off to the side, its own
it
thing, and they're not
is,
going to follow up with that.
which is kind of a bummer to me because I
Agreed.
feel like the Switch Lite is like one of the most perfect handhelds I've ever owned in my life. Like the
Exactly.
original Switch is like it's okay. It's not very attractive. It's pretty heavy. I have fairly small hands, so it's not like the easiest. The Switch Lite is just like it's so nice. It's like it's so appealing. The only thing about it really is the battery that, isn't amazing, but I'd put it up there with like the DS Lite as like my favorite
Yeah.
Nintendo handheld.
I mean, I fully agree. When I got it, it like solved all of my own personal issues, which is usually, again, this is like my weird brain, but like holding the Switch and just knowing that those Joy-Cons slide off and sometimes
Yeah,
they break.
yeah.
It's like I am like cradling it and with like a
Right.
little bit extra force, and it makes my hands cramp just that much quicker. And then the Switch Lite was like, no, this thing's one solid, sturdy, cool looking thing. And
Yeah.
it's nice to hold, and I really really like the Switch Lite. And I've stopped playing it since I got the OLED. I mean, my right
Sure,
analog stick
yeah.
also broke. I got to fix that, but whatever.
Mm,
It was really like, oh no, this OLED screen is so beautiful. I
yeah.
absolutely want to keep playing on there. So I agree. I think it's a bummer that I think we probably won't get a Switch Lite OLED. I hope. I mean, next time around when they do give us a Switch Pro or a Switch 2, I hope we go through this process again and they do a Switch Lite 2 and that just has
Right,
an OLED
yeah.
screen baked in. I think that's probably likely, but it's not like I thought they would put it out like this year. And it just with those numbers, they probably aren't rushing to do a refresh of the Switch Lite.
Yeah, makes sense.
Splinter Cell Remake job listing reveals the original game story is being rewritten for modern audiences. This comes from Michael Haradins, whose name I definitely practiced, at PlayStationUniverse.com. A job listing for a scriptwriter of the upcoming Splinter Cell remake at Ubisoft has indicated the development team are revamping the story for modern audiences. Here's a description of the job. Using the first Splinter Cell game as our foundation, we are rewriting and updating the story for modern audiences. We want to keep the spirit and themes of the original game while exploring our characters and the world to make them more authentic and believable. As a scriptwriter at Ubisoft Toronto, you will join the narrative team and help create a cohesive, compelling narrative experience for a new audience of Splinter Cell fans. I'm trying to like I don't remember the like details of the original Splinter Cell
Yeah.
story, but like the big beats of just being this special agent that works for this like third part of the military or the third part of the
Yeah, it's
government.
like a third echelon,
Third
I think,
echelon,
in
yeah.
NSA. Yeah.
Yes, right, and like the NSA and stuff like that, and it's
Right.
probably stuff that does need to be updated, right? You can't just be
So
like, well, "This is a super agent working for the NSA who's like probably reading your emails." Like they're gonna
right.
change some of those things you expect.
That stuff. Okay, so I was actually looking at the plot of Splinter Cell before this to try to remember like what
Yeah,
was that? Because I didn't own an Xbox until pretty late in that system's life cycle, but I
same.
played a bit of this at a friend's place, and Splinter Cell came out in 2002, right? It's like 20 years ago. And I realized the Tom Clancy like main terrorist countries in that game that like the villains are coming from are Russia and China. I think in 2002, Russia and China are like sort of the fun enemies that you put in a
Right.
game when you're like, who will United States be in conflict with in the future? And they were like splinter factions of those. It wasn't just like a
Oh yeah, of
national war,
course.
of course. But I think in 2022 or 2023, you probably don't do that. Like
Mm-hmm.
Russia has gone back from not being the fun, like, oh, remember in the Cold War?
Right.
So now it's like I would kind of assume that might get changed too, and it might just be some kind of weird rogue state or something.
I bet you're exactly because like 2002 that was the halcyon days of brick countries. We got Brazil, Russia, India, China. They're rising up and they're going to be the new superpowers. Isn't that fun? Good for them. And now
Yeah.
it's like, oh man, this is a real headache that we're like we got Russia doing this and our relationship with China is so like split on all these different things and yeah. So I think you're probably right.
They'll do the Top Gun Maverick thing,
Yes.
and just be like, we're just not gonna say who
The enemy, yeah. I mean, it
the
did
enemy.
not
Yeah.
hurt Top Gun Maverick at all. It's like
Probably
even
helped it a lot. Yeah.
yeah, and even people that criticize it are just like, Whatever." Like, of course
Yeah.
they did
It's
that.
just an excuse to see planes do cool stuff. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's whatever, but sure.
and I think that's like almost exactly what you probably mean by modern day audiences. Is like they Hey, we're Ubisoft. Everything's not political. We don't want to think about this. We don't want you thinking about this. We just want you to think about, hey, it's cool. He's doing the splits in a
He
hallway
did the
and standing
split
above.
hallway.
Yeah, the
That's
hallway
like his
splits.
one move.
I mean, listen, it's a powerful, good move. I still think
It's
about
a
that.
great move. No one ever looks up, as it turns out. So.
That Jean-Claude Van Damme commercial where he's like on the two trucks and he's like doing the splits
Oh
as they
my
like
God,
spread
yeah.
apart. I think about that every day of my life. It's too good. I am hopeful that this game comes out and it's fun. I really do actually like Splinter Cell.
I miss Splinter Cell.
Yeah, and there's
God,
like a lot of tech that's happened in the last couple of years with like ray trace lighting, where you know you could like shoot out a light and it might actually have the physical effect that you would expect it to, and that could be really neat. I hope they do stuff like that.
I mean, that first game, the lighting stuff in that first game for the time were incredible.
Yep.
And then, God, I never really got to play the asymmetric multiplayer mode.
People love that. I never did either.
So cool. Yeah.
I feel like that's probably the pathway they should take here. Is you put out this remake and you establish, you know, Splinter Cell again as an ongoing franchise, and then you do the free-to-play online multiplayer shooter that is that
Spies versus Mercs thing.
Spies versus Mercs, yes, and you just create it, and you could like do it on PC and console and mobile probably, and just kind of make it a really, you know, distilled version of that, and then have all the cosmetics and stuff. I mean, they got to have something after Siege at a certain point, and maybe that could be one of the options. So yeah. Gearbox says Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is clearly a new franchise after shattering targets. This comes from Tom Ivan at VGC. Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford has said new Tiny Tina's Wonderland experiences are in development after the game shattered the company's targets. The Borderlands spin-off was released in March for PlayStation and Xbox consoles, PC via the Epic Game Store before hitting Steam in June. And it is, yes, it's been selling very well. It's, I think that audience, there's just a Borderlands audience out there that just shows up for all of these games. And now this is another offshoot where it's like, you know, people might prefer this way of like, where it's like, you know, even more whimsical and fun in some ways, and but also still has the same humor that I think some people actually do like, but not for me. But yeah, I'm not surprised to hear this. And also, this is a Gearbox's strategy under Embracer Group now. And I'm like, oh yeah, they're going to keep doing the thing that just worked last time. That's probably what they're going to do at Embracer.
I will say, like, I didn't really play much of it. I was thinking of actually going back and looking at it now after this announcement. I heard from my colleagues that Tiny Tina was actually like, they were people who were like kind of burnt out on Borderlands. But it does some of what those games do, and then it felt like the writing and stuff was moving in a direction that was like a little more palatable to them, I guess.
That's good to hear.
Because I bounced off of 3 pretty hard after playing the first 2. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's cool to see them maybe branching out a little bit. Who knows what the next Tiny Tina thing will be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they'll probably just like go back and forth, right? Do a Tiny Tina, do a Borderlands, do a Tiny Tina, do a Borderlands. That makes a lot of sense. Finally, a story I mentioned yesterday and I didn't have time to touch on because I didn't have time to read the story before the show, so I went through it this morning, and let's get into it. This comes from Bloomberg. Child predators use Twitch to systematically track kids who are live streaming. Here's like the big points, and then we'll get into discussing it. Twitch, the Amazon subsidiary where millions of people congregate every day to watch skilled gamers play franchises like Fortnite and Minecraft, is one of the most popular websites on the internet. But the factors that have contributed to its rapid growth, such as the ease with which anyone can open an account and begin broadcasting themselves live, have also enabled predators to target young users. This is according to an analysis from October 2020 through August 2022 by a researcher who studies live streaming websites. During this time, at least 1,976 users systemically found and followed young people recording themselves live on the site. And that's according to a Twitch profile data and screenshots and videos discovered by the researcher and reviewed by Bloomberg. The unusual patterns of behavior seen in these accounts indicate that many exist primarily to catalog and watch and manipulate children, including enticing them to perform everything from suggestive dances to explicit sexual acts. These alleged predators targeted 279,000 children, according to the researcher. Hundreds of apparent predator accounts each had more than 1,000 kids on their following list. This is not... It's not surprising. It also feels a little bit surprising because it's like, if it's this widespread, how is it not like the number one talking point all the time when it comes to like, how do we improve the systems for protecting kids on these platforms. Now,
Yeah.
to its point, Twitch says we don't allow kids 13 and younger on our site,
Hmm.
and they do say this is like their number one priority is protecting young people. It's a tough challenge, but it also feels like something that here's my thing. Twitter knows how to knows if you're a Nazi, right? Like in Germany, if you are a Nazi, they just automatically ban you from the platform. They know your thoughts basically
Sure.
based on your behaviors.
Yeah.
And that's that's algorithms and all that stuff, which are only so reliable. But they, in many cases, they could tell if you are up to a certain type of behavior. They can spot that just without actually having any human intervention. It
Sure.
feels like we should err on the side of using those kinds of tools to just really be spotlighting
Yeah.
and putting at least yellow flags on these accounts, and maybe like preventing them from accessing these things in the first place. Now, is this realistic? I don't know. I'm not an engineer, but it seems like something that could be implemented. Beyond that, I really don't know what to do other than to keep bringing this up and keep highlighting that this is
Yeah.
a major issue.
Yeah. I mean, you'd think like, okay, you're Twitch, you're the personification of Twitch, and you see an account that's following 1,000 accounts, and they're all like children.
Right.
It's like, huh. But obviously, I don't mean to like gloss this because it's a complicated issue in terms of like, okay, well, where do you come down on people? When do you do that? How do you determine what's like the threshold? Um, there's like privacy issues. But it is just like, oh wow, bad week for Twitch, huh?
Yes.
Although in a way, I guess this sort of did push the rev split conversation out of the picture. So I
Yeah.
don't know. You can
Yeah.
only,
It
yeah,
it's the kind of thing where it affects every website, every platform.
yeah.
I think that this story goes on to kind of explain that actually some websites are doing more than what Twitch is doing.
Mm,
The YouTube, like you have to, before you can go live on YouTube, you have to have so many like followers or something like that, and you have to like wait
yeah,
you
yeah.
can create an account and then go live. And
Right. Yeah.
TikTok has a similar sort of a barrier before going live
Hmm.
on TikTok. But I am betting, regardless of those hurdles, many of these same things are just happening on those platforms where
Totally. Yeah.
kids who aren't 13 are just got their phones, are just pressing a button to go live, not thinking about any of the ramifications because they're kids. Of course, they're not. And now they are using your platform, and you kind of have to take some responsibility for what happens next. And where is the where is the incentive? Like, there's no explicit incentive in
Right.
their business model for doing this. In fact, the incentives might be
Be the
pushing in
opposite.
be the
Yeah.
opposite, right? You don't want to be shutting down all these accounts that are engaging with your platform. The engagement is the big number. That's what they care about, and these are very engaged
Right.
accounts. And it's like, well, okay, but this is a poison that will destroy everything else if you don't do something about it. So you
Right.
probably should be doing something about it. I expect that eventually we will get to a point where regulation does really crack down on this stuff. I
Mm.
am not confident that would actually be able to deal with the problem. It's probably just going to create new ways of skirting around it. But these companies probably want to avoid that regardless. So do they
Yeah.
do enough to head that off? I don't know. It doesn't seem like they are doing enough right now. Uh, I guess, what do you think happens next here? Do you think we go from the story and nothing happens, or do you think that like, this builds in any substantial way?
I would hope there's some kind of like like internal investigation or like look at at like some kind of task force or something to just determine like, okay, what are the approaches that we can take here? Because I don't know what kinds of tools Twitch has for monitoring users, but I would assume they're fairly extensive, like you were
Right.
saying. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's like you were talking about engagement, and it's the same problem that all social media has at this point where um Twitter likes you to be mad, right? Because it's engagement.
Right.
You're reacting strongly to something, you're engaged. If
Yeah.
people are chatting with someone, they're engaged. It doesn't matter like what the content of that is. And being agnostic to the content of that stuff is what's like allowing these kinds of things to happen.
Mhm.
Um but changing that would so fundamentally go against the kind of engagement driven ethos of these platforms that I don't know. I mean, if this doesn't prompt that kind of look at those things, then I don't know what would.
Right, and this obviously is going to come from sort of Silicon Valley libertarian bro mindset of like, who are we to judge? Who are we to like go in there and say this person can't be on here? And obviously, when it reaches a certain point of predation, like I think even many of them would do something. It's like, but
Yeah.
like, is that what they're like? Who am I to say that that's what's happening here? Is I think how many of them still would look at it.
Right. Yeah.
And then on top of that, it's they just probably don't actually all like care that much. Really, that's just comes down to that. They just don't actually care. So you kind of have to be forced to care. And who can do that? Well, yeah, government regulation, stuff like that could, but it's probably going to come down to someone like Pokimane and all these people that just stepped up about the gambling issue to band together on all of these issues and say, you actually need to do something or we will leave. Right. And I mean, again, it's like that is hurting. We talked about that with the gambling thing and say, oh, can they, protect themselves to like get a better revenue split by coming together and exerting their collective power. Like, even in their own interest, they might not be doing that. So are they going to do it for a topic like this? Maybe some, it seems like some of them definitely do care. But it just seems also like a really tough hurting of cats. So we'll see.
It's wild because I grew up being told like, oh, don't, strangers on the internet are going to get you and stuff. And back then I'm sure it happened, but it just wasn't as possible.
Yeah, it was like an abstract idea too. It's like,
Now
what
it's
does it
just
actually
like,
look like?
Kids are literally just like streaming their faces online and like adults can just interact with them. So like, oh Jesus, oh God, what have we done?
Yes, exactly. And it's a lot of this is we just didn't think about what we've done before we did it. And I mean, that's part of the magic of the internet is just like, hey, let's do something and see what happens. It's just, oh man, there are so many major detrimental effects and people get hurt. People who experience real pain because of that. And sometimes there are consequences. Most of the time, a lot of bodies have to be chewed up in that machinery before we actually get anything done to stop it again. All right, let me, I meant to go get my poll from yesterday. There he is. There we go. All right. Let's bring it up. All right, yesterday I asked, would you follow a Twitch creator that decided to move to YouTube? And 84.8% said yes, 15.2% said no. I think that this might be a little skewed by my audience, where it's like, I think the people who are showing up for a poll like this that are following me are like, I know the names of creators. I don't just go to Twitch looking for entertainment. I found someone and they took me to Twitch. And so if they went somewhere else, I would follow them. I think the actual number for that, we were talking like that wider audience that like Dunkey has. Those are people that probably just stumble across Dunkey's videos because of the algorithm and because they do very well. And so if he moved somewhere else, many of them probably honestly wouldn't even notice. I think the millions of people would. He's got a huge audience, but I think there'd
be some loss for sure.
Yeah, they're like the tens of millions of people that watch those videos would probably just be like, I don't know, they just disappear. I stopped seeing those videos. I don't know. Still, though, I think this probably is pretty encouraging to people that are considering other options. Not that there are many when it comes to not streaming on Twitch, right?
Yeah, like let's go to Mix.
Yeah.
No.
That sucks particularly because I get why Microsoft shut it down. It wasn't going to work.
Sure.
It was the right move for them at that time. But they did buy Beam.Pro and then just shut it down. And it's like, man, couldn't you just like let it go? And probably no one there wanted to keep it going. But like in my mind, it's like, but can't you just like let it go be Beam.Pro again and just stand on its own and be its own thing? Like the whole point of starting a website like that, a platform like that, is to get purchased by Microsoft. So you got your payday, you went on, you moved on with your life probably. Sure. But still, it's like, there was a competitor out there. Microsoft bought it and closed it. That's not great. All right. Let's see. I was going to ask, let's see. I put it in here and now I don't know if I have it anymore. What was I going to ask today? Okay, let's see if we can figure out a poll question since my brain is completely broken and destroyed. Let's see. Okay, yeah, let's do something along the Dunkey lines. Do you think a video game reviewer would be a good video game publisher? And I think that is just a really engagement heavy question right there. People just come and yell at me. Mess mornings.
From both sides too.
Yeah, absolutely. In the meantime, Merritt, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great.
Yeah, where can people find you on the internet? You got anything planned? Anything coming up you want to talk about?
So I'm at merrittk on Twitter, 2 R's and 2 T's. And yeah, Fanbyte is sort of, on a decline. We're sort of gliding off into the distance at this point. Um, I have a book coming out that,
Ooh,
hasn't been publicly announced yet, so I guess this is maybe my, like, stealth public reveal.
hey, hell yeah.
It's called The LAN Party, and it is a coffee table book of photos of LAN parties from the '90s and 2000s,
Oh, that's fun.
uh, with some essays from some people. I don't wanna say who, but maybe some people you might know from developing some of the most famous first-person shooters of all time. Um So, it's this beautiful coffee table book, just, like, these photos of LAN parties of just, like, the most outlandish, like, basements and just, like, kitchens with, like, old beige towers stacked up on the counters. It's a project that's, like, been in the works for over a year at this point, and I think we're announcing it publicly, like, this week or next week. Um, so keep an eye out for that.
I love that. What was that like how many pictures did you actually end up like getting?
I have a few hundred so far, and I think so it's gonna be going on a crowdfunding thing, not Kickstarter, but,
Mm,
like, the publisher has sort of their own thing that they've produced
sure.
electronics and games sort of art books on before. Um, so I will also be looking for more. So if you have, like, there is still some space, so if you have any good photos of LAN parties from that
Well,
era,
what makes a good
um
photo?
oh my god, so many things can make a good LAN party photo. Like, it can have it can be just showing sort of the relics of the time.
Mhm.
Like, there's so many, gateway cases, there's so many bottles of balls everywhere. Just sculptures made out of, like, of just empties of balls. Just even just people, like, turning and, like, looking at the camera or, like, because the fun thing about the era too is, like, people are sort of learning how to do digital photography because you've got, like, point and shoots becoming a lot cheaper and proliferating. So there's sort of like early selfies and like proto selfies, people in Jinkos playing Counter-Strike. There is like such I've gotten so many wonderful photos so far. And some of them, just the composition is accidentally really beautiful, and some of them
Mhm.
are just like, this is just a snapshot of, like, this weird era, and we're using some AI stuff to upscale them because a lot of these photos were really low
Right, yeah.
res because they're taking on these really terrible 2000s, point and shoots, so
Yeah, right. I was gonna say like they probably aren't actually like like photos like photography. It's probably like digital
it's all
photography.
digital. Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
digital photos. So we're cleaning those up, making them look a little nicer, and like I said, we've got some essays from people about like, how LAN parties sort of, like, came about. Because that's kind of a really interesting thing too of just like graphics were getting better, but internet speed and infrastructure
Mhm.
wasn't totally there in the US.
Right.
So you just had people packing their huge monitors and towers into minivans and driving around the suburbs with them.
The way
Um,
God intended. That's the way it should
yeah,
be. You were
exactly.
you were
Return
gonna
to
say
tradition.
where people could like reach out to you with their images. Do you have a place you
Yeah,
want them to send it
actually,
to, or?
probably the easiest way is just to DM me on Twitter. My DMs are open at merrittk. Um, So if you have photos and you wanna talk, DM me there, and, we can figure that out, and yeah, hopefully in the next week or so, the crowdfunding page will go live, so,
That's
yeah.
fantastic. I was trying to see you said it, so I'm like, man, now I want to get some. I looked up to see if I could buy some balls. It is on Amazon.com. I could get a
Uh-huh.
10 pack for $35. Oh, right next to it though, Pussy Natural Energy Drink for $20. I'm like, what? Okay, yeah.
Well, it's the
Um,
the natural opposite, I guess. I don't
yeah, but I mean, it's just natural energy. That's where all energy comes from, I guess. All right,
kn
fair enough.
yeah.
Thank you, Amazon, for your bountiful options of energy
Yes.
drinks. Yeah, so I'm gonna get some balls and I'll report back. I've not
Yeah.
drank one of those in a very long
Oh, me
time.
neither. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's been a minute.
yeah, that's fantastic. I'm looking forward to that. That's a very awesome idea, and I imagine that like going through that process, like your eye just got like this. I know this. I don't know what makes this one a great one, but yeah, like that composition you were talking about, like it's like a Caravaggio or whatever.
Right, yeah. Chiaroscuro, yeah.
All right, everybody. Giant Bomb, what do we got going on? It is Thursday, so voicemail dump truck is happening later. I believe we'll be streaming something right after this, but I honestly can't keep track anymore. Is it Sonic 06? Is it Sekiro? We might be
Oh,
doing Sekiro,
boy.
but I think Jan might not be. His
Wow,
tummy might
just
be.
2 really
Scorn.
similar games.
Yeah.
Jesus.
No, we got Jess doing Scorn. That's right, Jess.
Oh,
Thank you for
Scorn, is
picking
that
that
out
up.
now?
I think she's got a demo or something. I don't know. I'm gonna sit
Oh.
in there with her because I'm like I want to see the wall. Oh, and yeah, Jace. Okay, confirms Scorn. So stick around. We are gonna go into Scorn. We're gonna get set up on that right now. In the meantime, Once again, Merrick, thank you so much. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
This was great. Thanks
Yeah,
so
this
much.
was fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for watching. You're the best audience in gaming. I really appreciate it. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye. And drink pussy, apparently.